you go.
What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're looking at r/MaliciousCompliance. If you're new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe and maybe that notification bell if you enjoy the content, of course. And with that being said, let's get straight into today's stories. Much love, guys. Our first story is from Spiral MX. Science teacher has a swear jar. I took a biology class my sophomore year in high school. My teacher was pretty cool. She was laid back, funny, and didn't have your typical teacher vibe. She had set up a curse jar in the room, and the funds were used to pay for supplies. 25 cents if you swore, but $1 if you dropped an F-bomb. One day we were doing some group work in tables, done with a Bunsen burner and the sink in the middle. Behind me was a kid that was particularly annoying and pretty talkative. Patrick was probably the type of kid who later went on to cure cancer or create Minecraft. Smart kid, but he was basically a 17-year-old Martin from The Simpsons. Anywho, we're all trying to do our work and Patrick is just getting on my nerves. He keeps making loud, bad jokes and poking his head into our project, telling us that we're doing it wrong. Telling us what we were doing wrong. I asked him twice just to worry about his own table, but the third time, I lost it. I walked up to the front of the class, pulled out my wallet, grabbed $1 and put it on the teacher's desk, turned around and said quite loudly, "Patrick, shut the fuck up!" I walked back to my table and sat down. The entire class was silent and was staring at me, and then the teacher. She looked down at the dollar bill on her desk and started laughing out loud. The rest of the class joined in and Patrick shrunk into his seat. The teacher then said, well, he paid his $1. And that's the story of how I told a kid to shut the fuck up in class without getting into trouble. Our next story is from Adept. Teacher asked why I take so long in the bathroom. Context, I have a weak stomach, causing me to be in the bathroom for extended periods of time. This incident happened about 2 months ago in my literature class. I just finished an exam when I started to get the shits. I got up from my desk and asked the teacher if I could use the restroom. She said yes, and I headed down the wing to the restroom. I wasn't feeling too well and ended up spending 20-ish minutes on the toilet. Once I started to feel better, I headed back to class. I walked into the classroom and my teacher began berating me how I was skipping class, that she was going to get me ISS, etc. I tried to explain myself, but she wouldn't believe me unless I gave her evidence, so I ended up getting a week of after-school detention. Fast forward to yesterday, I again wasn't feeling well and asked to use the restroom. My teacher gave me a snarky response saying, "You're not going to skip, are you?" I just ignored her and headed to the restroom. Once I got there, I ended up releasing the floodgates, being stuck in the bathroom for 30 minutes. Knowing if I went to class, I would get chewed out, I took out my phone and took a photo of my creation. I head back to the class and my teacher starts a rant about me skipping. I tell her I was in the restroom and again, she doesn't believe me, so I pull my phone out, showing her the photo. She was disgusted beyond belief, started to gag, throwing up in her trash can. It got so bad she ended up leaving early. Sadly though, I did get in school suspension for it. How can you get in school suspension? You gave her proof. Our next story is from Punchology. Teacher tells my little sister she can't have a lip balm. Sister gives her a shriek-inducing smile. This is my sister's story, but it's too good not to share. This was back when she was in 2nd grade, and this girl was the perfect child. I wish I was kidding, but no, you know that one kid with a halo and the sweet smile, the manners to make a parent proud and cutesy little voice. Yep, that's her, but she does have a mean streak when you push her. You'd think that all teachers loved her, right? Nope, not her 2nd grade teacher. This woman was hellfire personified, and she for some reason hated my little sister. More often than not, my little sister came out of that classroom trying to hold back tears. 2 more very important things about my sister. She has always had lips that would get so chapped they would bleed, and she always carried around Carmex with her. So, one day she's sitting in a class with Hale's favourite teacher when she pulls out a little tub of Carmex, and the teacher immediately starts screeching at her to see her after class. End of class, the teacher tells her that she must keep the Carmex with the school's office because it says medicated, and back in the day you had to literally be dying just for the office to give you your things. No joke. I'm asthmatic, and it took almost dying on the office floor for them to hand my inhaler over, but that's another story. My sister tries to explain that without her Carmex, her lips will bleed, but the woman does not care. Well, hell hath no fury like a little sweet baby scorned. Very next morning, she doesn't use any in the morning, doesn't use any for the ride to school, doesn't use it before sister hands a little tub of Carmex over to the office lady, who looks at her very confused but just does not give a shit, and she heads off to class. She does her best to keep calm when she starts to feel her lips get chapped, keeping her lips as drawn in and neutral as she can. She spends most of the day with her head down and not speaking, until finally the teacher calls on her to answer a math question. Now, I should probably warn everyone this might get a little graphic. Sister lifts her head up, looks at the woman right in the eyes and smiles as wide as she can. Tears rolling down her cheeks, and she can feel her lips splitting open so badly they're not just bleeding a little, it's rolling down her chin, mixing with her tears. Down her neck, onto the collar of her shirt, this woman screamed so loudly that us third graders across the hall could hear it. She ended up ripping her lips so badly they had to page little third grade me to call my mum to pick her up, and she had to stay home for a couple of days to recover. When she came back, however, not only did the teacher personally hand her a Carmex over, she had brought a few more little tubs of the stuff for, just in case she ever ran out, and never bothered her again. I don't know if it's coincidence that year was the last year she taught, but a little part of me likes to think she met her match in my little sister. Wow, that thought of the little girl just smiling and blood just coming down, it sounds like a horror movie, man. Our next story is from Worrell. They wanted a bigger glass, so he gave them a bigger glass. My parents and I were on vacation a few years back and hanging out at a hotel bar. This place was one of those places that was cheap, but everyone who stayed there thought they were better than everyone else. A couple, male and female, walked in talking about how nice and quaint the bar looked. They sat down at the table next to us. You were supposed to order your drinks at the bar, then sit down, but since it was a slow night, the bartender walked over and served them. The bartender said, "Hi, what can I get you?" The man said, "What wines do you have tonight?" And the bartender reads off a wine list. The woman said, "Ooh, a rosé wine would be just perfect." The man said, "Make it 2. And the bartender said, "Sure, that'd be $15. We're going to open a tab." The bartender said, "Unfortunately, we don't do tabs here. You have to either charge to your room or pay cash." He throws his room card on the table. "Ugh, fine, charge it to that." They laugh as the bartender grabs the card and heads back to the bar. Bartender pours their drinks and brings them back over. The first thing they did was hold up the glasses. The woman said, "These are rather small. Do you have any bigger glasses?" The bartender says, "Unfortunately, those are the standard glasses." The man then goes, "Really? We're paying $7.50 a glass and you're going to get chinsy on us. Surely you have bigger glasses, come on." The bartender is clearly angered. "Okay, I'll go check." He went to the bar and came back with 2 glasses that I think were supposed to be for margaritas, but were at least twice the size as the wine glasses. He held them up for them. He said, "How are these?" The woman said, "Oh, those are perfect." The man said, "Yes, thank you." So the bartender puts the bigger glasses on their table, takes the smaller glasses and dumps them into the bigger glasses, and then says, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" They didn't say anything, just sat there dumbfounded. To which the bartender said, "Great." My parents and I started losing it. We tried not to laugh, but we were all a bit inebriated, I guess. Bartender looked over at us and smiled. My dad gave him an extra $10 tip and said, "Thanks for the laughs." Don't fuck with people who serve your drinks. Lol. Our next story is from Mossy Manon. No paid overtime, you say? Okay. English is not my native language, so bear with me on this long story. I know there's lots of typos and lack of apostrophes, etc. This story happened in the late 90s when I got my truck driver's license. I was about 32 years old at the time. The world wasn't as digital back then as it is now, and we had to use paper rest diagram discs that were filled out with our names, dates, number plate for the truck and how many kilometers it had run before we started our day. The disc was then inserted under the speedometer. This was important because if we were pulled over by the police or road authorities, they could check if we had our required resting period and didn't drive too many hours, which could be dangerous if we got tired and fell asleep behind the wheel. The law states that we can drive 4.5 hours straight, but then you need to take a 45-minute break before you could drive another 4.5 hours. After the 4.5 hours, you're not allowed to drive any more that day and have to take a break till the next day, or at least 11 hours. There are some exclusions to that law, but I won't go into that because it's irrelevant to this story. What's relevant though, is that when you're on your break, you're not allowed to do any kind of work at all, you just have to rest. There's a little knob on the speedometer that you could switch from driving to other work. This is included into the 4.5 hours of driving, or to break/rest. If you were driving from A to B in 4 hours, switched to other work and loaded/unloaded or whatever you had to do for 30 minutes, then you had to take a break for 45 minutes. You get the picture. I hadn't been working for a few years due to some major damages I got from an accident when I was hit by a car, when I was riding a small motorcycle myself, and I had used time to recover from it. Took the opportunity to get the truck driver's license and thought I'd try to get to work again and started applying for jobs. This was the background. Now my story starts. I got a job at a small delivery company that had 6 to 7 trucks and we're all driving on our own assigned routes. This company was located in another town and I had to drive my own car nearly 1 hour to get there. My contract with this company set out to work for 10 hours per day, 7 AM to 5 PM, and I was on salary. Oops, red flag. Remember the 9-hour per day rule? I was told by my boss not to put in my paper disc under the speedometer before I actually left the loading dock. That way we could bend the rules. Second red flag. He also told me that, as I had so many stops per day, I didn't need the 45-minute break to get my rest time, as the times I was loading and unloading, the goods probably would be more than 45 minutes per day. Third red flag. Well, I needed a job to get myself into routine again after being away from work and life for several years, so I gave it a go. They delivered and picked up the goods that were going across those routes and shared the goods amongst drivers on their own loading dock and goods station. Let's say truck A came in with a pallet that were going on truck D's route, then truck A left it on the loading dock at the end of the day, then the driver of truck D loaded it onto truck D and delivered it the next day. Quite effective. I was told that I had 3 days of training with the driver that had the route that I was assigned for before he was leaving the company for another job. This was for me to get to know the route and some customers before I started. My trainer left after day 1, then I was on my own. Fourth red flag. This was before everyone had GPS, and there I was, a truck driver with a fresh driver's license who hadn't been working for years, driving on roads I didn't know at all. Needless to say, I used longer time on everything because of that, but at least I made it through the days. The boss was a fat blimp, 10 years younger than me, and was given the position because his father knew people. All the rest of the drivers were his age, and he tried to befriend all of them. Once a month on a Saturday, he set up a mandatory company meeting that took place in the office, and we didn't do nothing other than eating pizza and talking crap. This was the boss's way to show he was a good boss and take care of his employees, by feeding them pizza. Mind you, I had to drive 1 hour to get there, and 1 hour back home for this unpaid meeting with free pizza and crap talking. I was the only employee that lived out of town, and he didn't see I lost both family time and money by attending to these meetings. In his own words, we had to socialise, and since we didn't have time to do it on our work days, we had to do it on a Saturday. Hooray! Thanks for the free pizza, boss, and thanks for ruining my day off. To explain how good this boss was, I have to tell a story about when I was supposed to pick up an industrial metal door from the factory. They forgot to grind one of the edges to smooth it, and when I was lifting it, the metal cut through my glove and into my fingers and made me bleed pretty bad. I'd loaded the door onto the truck and secured it, then I got a new unused glove to put on my bleeding hand before I drove to hospital and parked at the side. I went into the emergency entrance where the ambulances were, found a woman dressed in white and asked if I could get some help. She asked me why I needed help, and then I pulled off my glove by its fingertips. Incredible how much blood there is pumping through there. When I pulled the glove off to show her, there was a pool of blood on the floor. I was stitched up and got a tetanus shot and was told to sit on the chair for 30 minutes to see if there were any complications or reactions from the shot. After said 30 minutes, I was allowed to drive the truck back to the company, but got discharged from work for 4 days so the wound could heal. When I called into the office, my boss was pissed off because he didn't need accidents in his reports. If you injure yourself at work here, it's supposed to be reported to the Labour Inspection Service, but I guess he forgot, as it's a lot of papers to fill in, and if you're inspected and found wrong, it will hit the company hard. Wound healed and I'm back at work. One day I got a phone call at 3 PM, was told I had to go to a way out of route, and to another shipping company to pick up a few pallets of something that they had failed to deliver to a factory. Now that factory had shut down their production because of it. The factory couldn't produce whatever they did due to a lack of feed. I was told by my boss that we, the company that I worked for, would be paid generously as this was after our emergency, blah blah blah, and that we would get good rates and more to do. I did what I was told. I knew I was breaking the law, but my company would probably pay the fines if I was pulled over by the police for anything, and drove the fast as I could to get factory their goods. They were very happy with what I did, and if they had a red carpet, I'm pretty sure they would have rolled it out for me when I arrived. I drove from the factory and to my company's loading dock, where I parked for the night. It was now 9 PM. Next day the boss slapped me on my back and told me I did a good job, and I thought so myself as well, even with too many hours behind the wheel. I was on salary, remember? Even though I still have to turn in my timesheets every week, telling me when I started work and when I finished each day. We did this manually and I wrote down my overtime. To my surprise, I didn't get more than usual when we were paid, and I went into the office and questioned my boss about it. The answer I got was, "You're on salary, you don't get paid overtime." When I told him that this wasn't fair, as the company clearly made a load of money on me driving for them, my boss shrugged and said that I needed to see that I had stretched myself a little, as this was a small company and they needed the money. I was pissed. I went out the office and slammed the door so hard that I heard the pictures that was hanging on the plaster wall fall down. I got a write-up for that one. Now, the malicious compliance. I started putting in the paper disk, drive/rest that I told you about in the beginning of the story exactly at 7 PM and then turned the knob to other work. Then I worked for exactly 4.5 hours and had my 45 minutes break. I stopped my usual delivering and pickups exactly 3 PM. After that I started driving to our company's loading dock. A truck can only drive as fast as 80 km per hour. If you go over, then you are speeding according to the law. This was well calculated. From where I usually was located at 3 PM, it would take me about 1.5 hours to get home. Then I had 30 minutes to unload the truck and get all the goods in it where it was supposed to be in our depot. After the 30 minutes the clock were at 5 PM and I was off for the day, as I didn't get paid for any more than that. After a month or so, I had to switch routes and I got one that I didn't know again, and things went slow. Just like with the beginning of the previous one, no GPS means slow. I continued to do the same and ended my day at 5 PM every single day. Now my boss was pissed because he couldn't do anything about it, as I did my work and the company was losing money every day, hence the pickups and drop-offs not being done. Then he decided to punish me. Well, so he thought. He rented me out to the mother company, the one that actually owned the company that I worked for. I was instructed to drive to a city, far from where we were located, and pick up a truck full of pallets that were supposed to be distributed the same day by myself. I didn't care what I did or where I was driving. My workday started at 7 AM and ended at 5 PM anyway. I loaded the pallets in said city and started the distribution. I think I got 3 of them delivered where they were supposed to be before my 4.5 hours were up and I had to take my break. I stopped the truck and started my lunch break. While I was eating, the phone rang, but I ignored it. I was on my break. When my break was over, I called back the number that called me and spoke to my boss for the day. He wasn't happy that I took 45 minutes and not answering the phone, but little he could do about it. He just wanted to know where in the world I was, and he wasn't getting happier when I told him that I had only delivered 3 pallets till now. The day went on like normal. I delivered most of what I was supposed to, but I had 4 pallets left on my truck when it was time to start driving back to the company. I called the boss of the day and told him that everything went fine and that I only had 4 pallets left on the truck. He replied that he was glad that it went fine and delivering those 4 pallets would be no problem, as the places were waiting for them didn't close their doors before 8 PM, and that was 5 hours ahead. I replied with a grin on my face, "That might be, but I'm not paid after 5 PM, so I can't do that. In fact, at 8 PM, I'm probably sitting on my sofa with my legs up watching TV. You see, I can't afford to stretch that far. I have a family and I need money." I left my notice of resignation the day after that and started working as a forklift driver in a goods hub that I used to visit on my first route after that. I became friends with the workers there when I used to drive that route, and I was there every day delivering or picking up. They called me and asked me if I needed a career change, and of course I said yes. I got much better pay and I clocked out when I was supposed to. The best thing about this was, after a few months of working in that hub, my old boss came in with a small truck. He lost his job as boss and now he had to be a driver himself. He didn't have a license to drive the heavier trucks, so he was stuck with the small one that was an absolute shit to drive, as it was underpowered. He came to me with papers that showed he was to pick up an industrial double steel door, a really heavy one. I dropped it off in front of him and told him, "There you go," then I left him struggle with it alone. I hope he didn't cut himself. Edit. Just to clarify things, this didn't happen in the US, it happened in a small country in Europe, Norway. All the European countries, well at least all the members of the European Economic Area, have the same rules for truck driving regarding driving, working, resting hours. My country also has laws regarding weekly allowed working hours. Every hour worked over 37.5 hours per week is considered overtime and should be paid as such. There's a lot of stuff I've learned about truck driving in this story, but there's one thing. I love malicious compliance, but it's like, the malicious compliance in this story should have been like your statutory right in the first place. You shouldn't have to fight as much to get those rights. That company was totally in the wrong from the beginning, but I'm so glad you got one over on your ex-boss in the end. Wow. So what do you guys make of these stories? Which was your favourite from today's bunch? My favourite has to be, it's got to be the teacher with a swear jar, right? Getting some malicious compliance like that over your teacher. Wow, it wasn't even over the teacher. It was quite a wholesome story in the end, but I did enjoy that one. How about you guys? I would love to know in the comments below. Oh, and it did tickle me when the guy said he had the shits. If you made it this far in today's story, don't forget to put that bartender rocks. Once again, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. It's truly appreciated. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Much love now.